Hi everyone, I'm Carl Ravitch and welcome to Coaching Youth Sports, the official training program of the National Youth Sports Coaches Association. As a longtime ESPN announcer, I've loved sports my entire life, and I know the valuable role they play in helping youngsters develop not only athletic skills, but key life skills like confidence, perseverance, and respect, and many others that will serve them throughout adulthood. By volunteering to coach, you're providing a great service. But it's important to remember, coaching kids is a privilege, and with it comes huge responsibilities. To help prepare you to meet the needs of all your players and guide your teams to safe and fun-filled seasons, we've connected with some of the most well-known and highly respected coaches in the professional and collegiate ranks. Throughout this program, they'll share incredibly precious insight that will help make you that special coach that kids love playing for and learning from. You'll hear from them on the best ways to motivate the kids, how to conduct engaging practices, and teach good sportsmanship. You'll learn what role winning plays in youth sports, the keys to building confidence and bolstering self-esteem, and how to make everyone feel important regardless of their talent level. You'll also gain great insight on working with kids, managing your emotions during the excitement of the game day, and the best ways to work with parents. Plus, there's a lot of great information about recognizing and treating the injuries that are bound to happen, keeping players hydrated, and how kids' eating habits impact their performance. The NYSCA program has been helping volunteer coaches just like you since 1981. It's used in more than 3,000 cities nationwide, on U.S. military bases worldwide. Once you've completed the program, you'll be one of more than 3 million coaches who've done so. The children on your team are going to remember you for the rest of their lives, so it's great that you're taking the time to better understand your role to help make sure that they're remembering you for the right reasons. Best of luck this season, and let's get started. Regardless if this is your first venture into coaching youth sports or you've been volunteering for many years, it's important to note, coaching kids is about so much more than just the X's and O's of the sport. It's about being a teacher, role model, friend, confidant, disciplinarian, motivator, even the mother or father figure for some. And then there's a lot more. Let's listen to what some highly respected coaches have to say about what it means to be a youth sports coach.
Well, I think when you're a volunteer coach, you are obviously committed, and thank goodness you are, but you're not committed to your ego in it. Your ego in it should not be about what your record is. Your ego in it should be about the kids learning, getting better, having fun, gaining better values from their association with you. And so when you lose, I'm not saying to accept losses easily, but you can't become despondent. You have to make sure they understand that a loss is not the destination, that as a result of a loss, it's part of a journey. Everyone's going to lose. But how can they get better from that loss? On the other hand, not to celebrate the victory too high, where all of a sudden that becomes the final thing that they do. In other words, a huge thing to teach youngsters is how to handle success and failure. And if the coach doesn't know how to do that, then the kids are going to have a hard time learning that.
Well, for any coach, I think it's important to be a positive role model, because for a child, you are an extension of their moral base, and they get it at home, they get it in school with their teachers, and another good place to get it is in sports with their coaches. And whether you know it or not, kids are looking for structure, they're looking for people to emulate, and rather than have them emulate the things that are on TV, I know for my situation, my youth coaches were great role models for me. They were great examples for me. They were people who led me in the right direction. So if you are a youth coach, you volunteer, you do it after work, you do it during the day, you can't forget that the kids in America and around the world are looking for examples. And what greater way to be an extension of what they get at home than to do it in the sports field.
I heard a guy say one time, makes a lot of sense. As a youth coach, you did your job if the kid goes out for that sport again next year. Because it kind of says he had fun and he liked it, and he went back and wanted to play again. So you've kind of did your thing if they do that.
Well, the role of youth coaches is huge, and it's there to supplement the teachers. It's there to supplement the parents and the families, and delivering the same kind of message I think is important. And at the end of the day, the players really consider their coaches the role models, and doing things the right way is hugely important, and it'll be a huge impact on those kids.
I would tell them a couple of things. Number one, keep it very, very simple. Don't try to make it too complicated. Don't try to be the master coach. If you're just introducing a child to a sport, even if it's a youth team where kids have played for 4 or 5 years, you still got to remember to keep things pretty simple. And secondly, to make it fun for them, to allow them to be themselves, to work on improving, not just trying to win the game. I have a lot of friends who are in teaching, and it drives them nuts that they have to teach for the test, a standardized test that the kids have to pass. The difference between true teaching and teaching for the test is like a coach. If you're just teaching to help the kids win, they're missing the big picture. It's all about helping them enjoy themselves, enjoy the process, and continue to improve.
As the coach, it's your job to keep the interest and excitement level running high every time your team gathers for practice. After all, practices that youngsters eagerly look forward to attending week after week pay huge dividends in their skill development, enhance their enjoyment of the sport, and translate into plenty of that all-important fun in the process. In this section, we're going to take a closer look at several key areas that affect the quality of your practices and your impact on your team, such as the importance of keeping players active, motivating them the right way, teaching fundamentals, and making all players feel appreciated.
Well, I think the most important thing to create the right culture is to create a positive atmosphere. We use a 5-step teaching method to help our players. The first is explanation. The second step is demonstration. Third step is imitation. Fourth step is correction. And the fifth step is repetition. But the most important thing in all of those categories is to stay positive. When we say correction, we're not talking about criticism. We're talking about very, very helpful advice. And it's very, very important for kids to receive that information in a positive way so they stay positive.
Well, I think being positive is the biggest thing. Nobody wants to have someone just downing them all the time. So find positive. I often talk to leaders and coaches and everything. Your words can be one of two things. They can be, words of construction or words of destruction. Usually they're not in between. And the words of construction, keep building people up. It's easy to tear them down, those words of destruction. It's easy to tell them what you want. When a guy doesn't do what you want him to do as a coach, don't tell him that. Tell him what you want him to do. So keep building them up. You can do this. You're going to be able to do this. Just keep working at it. That's, now granted, I understand people get frustrated, but I think especially in youth sports, really at the end of the day, no one's losing their job on the win or the loss. So let's make sure that the kids come back the next time and play, because the alternative isn't good a lot of the times.
I think everybody that volunteers to be a coach has to understand that the kids are going to really take in what they say and believe everything they say, so the influence they have is tremendous. I have a summer basketball camp, and I tell all my coaches, try to be as positive as you can possibly be, because those kids are going to remember what you said. It is going to have an influence. It did on me. It's all personal experience, and it's something that I jokingly say, that kid that you are really nice to in camp, or it's really nice to as a volunteer team that you're coaching, may end up someday being your pilot, on an aircraft, on an airplane, and you get on that airplane and he sees you, you want him to make sure that he dodges all the bumps that he can dodge. And but those kind of people, those youngsters are going to be leaders, and you can really help them.
If the coach is prepared, I mean, that's an important thing. And I know the volunteer coaches, it's you know, they've got other jobs and children of their own and all of these things. But I mean, at the same time, I think they have to be prepared when they come to coach, and they have to be as passionate about the game as the players are.
Kids have to want to come there. And so the very first thing is to be organized. You know, to make sure you make effective use of time. In doing that, if you have a number of youngsters there, to try to eliminate as much standing around as you can. Try not to talk that much. Try to have activity, not listening as much. There should be more activity than listening. It's not about what you know and how you're explaining things. It's about what they're doing. And so you can talk to them while they're doing stuff, but try to cut the talk short, make the activity long, and make sure you no standing around. And if you can throw in a little bit of fun, and where they see accomplishment and where they're attaining certain goals during a practice. And then when they attain them, to celebrate it. You know, and when they don't, like, hey, this is what we have to do, but, and keep it moving. Keep it moving. You know, the more you can keep it moving, the better.
Well, you know, I think that's probably the biggest challenge for youth coaches, is making everybody a part of it and getting everybody involved. And over the years, we've been involved in a lot of camps, and that's always kind of been the motto. Short lines, everybody's involved, everybody's throwing, everybody's catching, everybody's running, making it competitive. I think you set up drills where there's not lines. You know, you set up drills where everybody's going against somebody, and you have a chance to kind of encourage and impact every single player at every single moment. The minute you see a young kid, a player, a boy or a girl, standing around, losing interest, then to me, that's a disaster. Because you're taking that child and they're going to lose interest in sports or activities really for the rest of their life. But if you can take that hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, however long you have them, and keep them engaged, keep them doing something, and the more you can make it competitive, where it's them going against somebody else, I think then you've got a chance to have a special drill for them.
Well, I think the connection is they have to feel that you're having as much fun as they have. And I think the way to do that is they have to feel your enthusiasm for something that they've done well. They have to feel like you're as enthusiastic for their performance as they are for their own performance. And that has to be genuine. To me, when you look at the best instructors in any sport, they're the instructors that know when it's time to congratulate the players. And you can't look at young kids as professional players. They need your constant feedback, they need your constant enthusiasm, and they need your constant support. The more you give it, the more you're going to get a good performance.
I think you make all the kids feel special when you spend time with everyone. Unfortunately, there are some teams and some places where the kids with the most talent get preferential treatment. I think the best way to build confidence to help a kid along is to make sure that you share equal amount of time with every child, because kids understand when they're being pushed to the side.
I think the first thing that a coach should do is be sure he knows the names of every one of his players, and be sure they know what they should call him, whether it be Coach so-and-so or by your first name or Mr. or Mrs. so-and-so, so that you immediately develop a connection with all your players. And then the most important thing is communicate, to talk with them, get to know them, learn who they are and what they're all about, learn them as an athlete and as a person. And the better you get to know them, the better you can communicate with them, the more they will respect you, and the better they will play for you.
Teach, encourage, emphasize. teach, encourage, emphasize. And you know, on our staff, we call that being teed up. All of our coaches want to be teed up every day at practice. You want to teach, encourage, emphasize. And you want to applaud or recognize an action that you want to see repeated by one of your players. So if somebody does something as small as dive on the floor for a loose ball and gets our team an extra possession, you acknowledge that. You congratulate them for making that effort, and hopefully it'll be a repeated action.
It's the coach's job to find out if there's 18 different personalities on the team, there's 18 different ways that you have to motivate these guys individually. So it's a tough go, but I mean, it's their job, and that's what makes it challenging, and everybody loves challenges.
I think your number one job is controlling hearts and minds. It's not the technical information you supply, it's controlling the hearts and minds in a positive direction. Every day you're with young people, your job as a coach is to provide hope. You're selling something, and that the sales job that you're providing is that position of hope. In other words, if you do this, it'll give you a chance to get better, and I think that's what kids want to hear.
Well, it's really important, first of all, for moms and dads to get involved. And I applaud the extra time and effort that these people give all over the world, really, on military bases, at community centers, to help the youth of our country. When they're doing it, they should realize it's not about winning and losing. You know, obviously, you want them to be competitive. Mainly, it's about developing a sense of values, you know, a sense of teamwork, what it is to be on a team, what it is to show support, what it is to help one another, what it is to fail and then succeed, what it is to help youngsters try their best. And to me, if they could get the message across that if you try your best, you're a winner. And if you consistently try your best, you will see improvement. And so not to get it too complicated, but to keep it simple, and it should be fun. You know, that kids should have fun learning those values.
It takes a lot of work to teach teamwork. One of the things that I talk about is if one of us isn't right, we're all not right. If there's a weak link in the chain is going to break at some point. And we never leave anyone behind. And I try to keep pounding home these catchphrases with the hopes that they start to repeat them. And even though you know you have better players, and even though there's some people on your team that have less talent, the bottom line is it's a team sport. And as much as you can, talk about the team. You know, every day that we break, we say 1, 2, 3 team, because everything that we do is about our team. And we always talk about the name on the front of the jersey as opposed to the name on the back of the jersey. That doesn't negate the ones who have great talent, but at the end of the day, if we don't have a team, we can't win.
To me, athletics is another type of intelligence. And when you teach that intelligence, some people, just like some people learn math one way, other people learn math another. Well, some people learn athletics one way and other people learn it another way. So you have to keep doing different methods to get through to all the kids. But I think there has to be a common denominator in your teaching. So there may be a different way to say it, but at the end of the day, this is what's critical.
Everybody needs positive feedback. Everybody needs someone to say, hey, you know, that's good. You know, you're doing well. Let's try this next time. To acknowledge that they've, because we all want a pat on the back. So I think that that's far better because you'd be surprised the kind of impact that that a coach can have on a young person's life. It's far more profound than that court or that field. And when the coach takes time to really understand that, you know what, for that time, you're the role model. You're the one that's developing a value system, and these are formative years. And so what do? I think the parent has to consider who it is that's going to touch their child, and what kind of values does that coach have that they demonstrate, not what they say, but who they are, what they've done. That will probably tell you a lot about it.
Well, we believe goals are very, very important, short-range goals and long-range goals. With our long-range goals, we often use the expression, begin with the end in mind. So when we begin a season, we want to think and plan for where we want to be and how good we need to be by the end of the season. Short-range goals then are the goals we set each and every day, each and every week, and each and every month to eventually reach that goal at the end of the season. And so we have goals for our shooting, ball handling, rebounding, all the fundamentals. And when an athlete sees himself improving in the fundamentals, they enjoy that. It encourages them, it motivates them, it inspires them to do more, to get better and better. And it's up to the coach to motivate and inspire the athletes so that they feel good about themselves. You're trying to build self-esteem and confidence so that they're doing things that they feel good about.
I know when I used to do practices, and even when it was in baseball or hockey, I always tried to finish up things with a success as minimal as it can be. In your practice, certainly you want to finish up and make sure that they do something that's successful. And even if they aren't, you got to make it act like they are. You know, they're looking to you for the guidance and you know, your validation that they're doing things right, and that they're doing the process the right way. So as an adult, I think you have to realize the role model and the influence that you can have on kids. The truth really is as you perceive it to be. It's really not the truth. It's the perception of whether you're doing well. And I think as a coach, you can have a huge influence on the way people look at things.
Lighten up, make it fun. You know, life's too short. Your childhood's too short. You know, would you want as a kid to play for you? Is it fun? Keep that in mind. You're not developing people for the next level. You're developing people for the next level of life. And I'm jealous. You have a chance to impact the heck out of kids because they remember their coaches just like I remember all of mine. And kids growing up, there's so many things pulling on their time and also their entertainment potential. So why would they want to come to your practice as opposed to sitting up in the room playing an electronic game? Ask yourself that question.
Game day is really what it's all about for the youngsters. The fans, the uniforms, the chance to play a sport they enjoy. It doesn't get much better than that for them. And game days can be lots of fun for you too, as long as you're prepared for your many responsibilities that will keep you busy well before the game begins to well after it ends. In this section, we're going to explore the role of winning, being a good sport, respecting the officials, calming kids' pregame nerves, and helping them get over a disappointing performance. They happen, among many other areas that impact the game day experience for everyone.
First of all, it's a game, and everybody should have fun. The coach, the players, the parents. Oftentimes we put too much emphasis on winning instead of having fun. And the funny thing about that is the more fun you have, the better you'll play.
This is a game, and it's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be fun. We all like to try to win, but in the end, it's about enjoying yourself, learning about the game when you're young, and learning all the lessons that go along with playing a game. I think that's really vital, and to understand it's not life or death. At the end of the game, you'll remember it for about, and the kids will remember it for maybe about an hour, and then it'll be like Etch-a-Sketch. It'll be erased from their memory.
At the end of the day, everybody wants to win. Don't misinterpret Vince Lombardi's message and all the great coaches that came before us. Everybody needs to win here. I need to win here as a major league manager. as a Little League coach somewhere, you don't need to win that day. You got to make sure that you're making every player better.
Well, I guess one of the things that I've always thought is when the outcome of the game, when your income doesn't rely on the outcome of that game, don't take it too seriously, right? I do this for a living, so you know what? If the outcome isn't right enough times, I don't get to keep doing it. But that's not the case in youth sports, so keep it in perspective.
I think you should play to win. I mean, I think you should play to do your best. And I think it depends what you want to consider success. If you're going to consider just because you won the game success, I don't know if that is necessarily what you should be the goal, because you may have a team that's not capable of beating another team. Just not going to do it. It's not going to happen. The other kids are more developed. They've got more better players on that team. But the fact that you play better or you improve as the season goes on, then you improve, you're getting better and better. So I think the biggest thing is let's teach the kids how to play. Let's help them get better, them getting the most out of their ability.
People talk about being a tough thing or a tricky thing. To me, it's a piece of cake. I mean, how hard is it? You know, everybody wants to talk about all the bad examples that you might see on TV. Well, you see some bad examples on TV, but how many good examples do you see? And maybe they aren't always the thing that gets played over and over again on SportsCenter, but you're a coach, you should be looking for those. Did you see the NBA playoffs last night? Did you see what happened after the game when LeBron went over and shook somebody's hand? Or whatever, or didn't shake somebody's hand, and how would you have handled that situation? You know, it's your team. These are your players. It's your opportunity to teach your lessons and your values. You're not beholden to what they see on TV. Find the good stuff, throw away the bad stuff, and make sure that they understand that being a good teammate and being a good sportsman is as important as anything to do in life. And down the road, when they're competing for a job or competing for a sale or whatever, they'll understand how important that is.
The coaches do that by how the coaches act. That's how you teach good sportsmanship, how you conduct yourself. The players, the kids are going to follow that immediately. If you're going to be a yeller and a screamer in the sidelines, yelling at umpires or other players, whatever, your kids are going to do exactly the same things. However you convert, that's how the players will.
You know, youth coaches probably can set a better example because they can do it earlier and teach it earlier, and the kids become accustomed to it. Sportsmanship is something that's extremely important. I want to play as hard as I can possibly play, compete as hard as I can possibly compete, and at the end of the game, congratulate the other coach, congratulate the other player if they have won. If I've won, try to be a little more compassionate. But I think that sportsmanship at that level is extremely important, and it sets the tone for the way they should act later on.
Well, you hope your parents have done a good job raising them. And I think that's, you know, it comes from them way before it comes from the coach. And then the coach has got to be a good sport himself. I mean, if the coach is behind the bench and all he's doing is swearing at the referees and the other teams, it's amazing how kids gain the personality of the coach. And if they gain the personality from a negative impact, then they're in trouble. I mean, they'll play on discipline. They'll be the ones that are dirty and it'll hit. And if the coach doesn't take that and end it in a hurry, then I think the whole system goes out of whack.
My coach, Dean Smith, said, don't get mad at the referees for penalizing your mistakes. So that's kind of what we try to do. We're not always good as coaches. Sometimes it's an emotional game. Things don't go our way. But that message that you send to the kids when things don't go your way, I think is really important. They'll remember that. They watch, they see everything you do, whatever you say, how you react on those sidelines, and they'll emulate you as a coach. And I think that message is very clear by your actions when things don't go your way.
You know, officials are a huge part of the game, whether it's the youth leagues or whether it's major college or NBA or professional baseball. You have to have that respect for them, know that they're doing the best they can do, and know it's a very difficult job. A lot of times my players will use the officials as an excuse, and I don't like that. I say, hey, you missed the shot, or we dribbled it off our foot out of bounds, or we let that guy score. The official had nothing to do with that.
You know, I tend to think in every level you should be process oriented, meaning that you want to win the game, but if you don't win the game, what did you need to do better, and what's the constructive things in there? And I think if you do that, that helps them understand. Like, you know, we played really hard, we played great defense. You know, we didn't pass very well. To give them information to make the next game better. Because for me, when we lose, I'm always thinking about the next game. I'm always trying to figure out how we can fix what was wrong. And sometimes even in youth sports, if you can, these are the things we did well, these are the things we're going to work on for our next game. And then at least the players aren't about the outcome. When you're just about the outcome and they don't know how to do it, they don't have the tools to change it. So I'm all about, especially at a young age, giving them the tools and the information to change what the next outcome would be.
Don't go into a pregame talk saying we have to win this. If we don't win this game, we're going to lose our whole season. And, the more pressure you put onto the child, the less they're going to perform. So you want to give them positive motivation and good directions. So why don't we go out there? I want you all to try your best. I want you to have fun. I want you to remember the things that we talked about in practice. So whether it's, running fast around the bases or tackling low, wait for the right moment to release the ball, giving them specific techniques that they want to focus on and telling them and reminding them to have fun. Because if they go out there and they're having fun and not worried about the outcome, it's going to be a better game and they're going to have the better opportunity to perform at their best as opposed to underperforming because they're scared to make a mistake.
I don't think you always have to have a pregame talk. Sometimes coaches feel like they have to say something every single game. I think if you can read your group, if you've had a good week of practices, if you had a good practice the day before, sometimes that is the pregame talk. Sometimes you may want to ask one of your leaders to say something. And then there are times where you've thought about it all day, you have something you saw on TV or something you read you want to share, great. But to fabricate it every single day, I think kids, players, teams in general, they read through that. And so I think it's important that coaches figure out when to and when not to. And I think that can be motivating. Sometimes you watch your film, you give the game plan and you say, let's go, and everybody's ready. And then sometimes you give a Newt Rockne speech and you get the guys ready to knock down a wall, great. But I don't think you have to do it every time. I think you have to do what's appropriate for that day.
Probably not. That's some things you got to fight your way through. That's part of nervous. Heck, we get nervous out here. Just have a different way of hiding it. But I think there's a confidence that comes through preparation, and I also think that the support group, if everybody knows that everybody's feeling the same thing, all the players, the coaches. I'll tell my guys 4 games one time. I said, "You nervous?" "I sure am." And it's okay to be that way. But understand what the end game is. What's the end game here? What are we really trying to accomplish at whatever level we're at? What is success and what's not?
Finding a way to make sure that they're calm and relaxed is key. There can be a lot of different exercises that you can do as a team. Deep breathing is really huge. For kids that are young, you want to have deep breaths that last maybe 12 to 15 seconds so you know it's hitting the diaphragm, so it's slowing that heart rate down a little bit. When we get excited, our heart rate increases, we tend to speed up, and when we speed up, we don't always play to our best. So if we can calm that heart rate down, we can get ourselves into a zone where we're playing more optimally as opposed to rushing things and making a mistake. So finding ways to keep them calm, and I know you're excited. Let's all take a couple deep breaths. Let's focus on our process and try and make sure we're making smart decisions out there and keeping at the right pace. Coaches should really be aware of their tone of voice as well as their body language when giving feedback or criticism. Young kids between the age of 8 and 12, in their developmental process, they're kind of using all of their experiences to develop their own identity. So if they start feeling like they're being belittled or constantly being picked on, they're going to start internalizing that and using that to define their self-worth, their confidence. And so we really want to make sure that when we're giving feedback, we're doing it in a nice manner and not making them feel ridiculed.
Understand one thing, the kids are really smart. They don't miss anything. And they will notice your good body language, your bad body language, your minor angry moment that you thought maybe had gone overlooked, that may just impact them way more than you ever thought it would have. Kids don't miss anything. That's what I'm talking about, being consistent. Really be aware of what you're going to say in advance of what you're going to say, and work with a little bit of a governor back there. Be careful. Honesty without compassion really does equal cruelty at the end of the day. So know what you're saying and how you're saying it in advance. The kids don't miss anything.
You never want to embarrass a kid. You embarrass a kid on the field, it may make you feel better as an adult, I guess. I don't know why. But in the long run, you've lost that kid, and he's not going to get the benefit of what he should get from that program.
I think everything that you do and everything that comes out of your mouth, people pay attention to, especially kids. And I think the impact that you have on children's lives lasts forever. And it can be very positive or it can be very negative depending on you handle it. And I think sometimes we get wrapped up, we're just trying to win games or we're just trying to compete, and what we say has a lasting impression. Well, for me, your job as a coach is to move your team forward quickly. How quick you move your team forward, that's the key to coaching, because it's about the next march that you're going to be on with your players, not what just transpired. It's what can we learn and how can we get better moving forward, and your job is not to dwell. Any coach that dwells on a loss keeps his team in the swamp, I always say. Get them out of the swamp. And the way to get them out of the swamp is provide hope for the next competition or the next practice or the next event. Your job is to move them forward as quickly as you can.
I think it's okay to take losses hard or a disappointing performance, because I think it helps you grow. You know, if you lose a game and you don't feel bad about it, I don't think you're much of a competitor. But I think a coach can help a child move forward by explaining to them that this is how you grow. You can't win every game, and what did you learn from the loss? We do that in professional sports. We teach our guys a lot from losses, and when they have a bad game, we show them film of the things that they didn't do well. At the same time, I think you can also show them things that they did well even though they lost or they think they didn't play well. You can always take positives out of any situation, and I think that helps kids when they can see both sides of the story.
Injuries are a part of sports, and while they're impossible to prevent, the chances of them occurring can be reduced greatly by understanding how to properly warm kids up before practices and games and then cool them down afterward. It's also important to know how to treat some of the more common injuries like strains and sprains, as well as recognize those more serious ones that require immediate attention from trained medical personnel. Let's take a look.
What's more important than stretching, which stretching should also be included in, is the general warm-up. Usually you need to get your blood flowing, you need to get the muscle temperature in the muscles, you need to get that, your body needs to get warmed up. You almost need to get a light sweat going. And then at that point, you need to go through a progression of stretching, muscles front to back, top to bottom, whether it's hamstrings, quads, low back, flexion, extension, rotation. You want to kind of move the body through all planes of motion and get them warmed up. Different types of stretching, dynamic, static, some ballistic. So you want to prepare the body. It's part of your warm-up. You want to prepare the body for the activity that you're going to do, and then that's the best way to prevent injuries. So with a lot of the stuff that we do here, we don't sit on the ground and just hold a hamstring stretch or hold a quad stretch, because a lot of that is not what we're doing in activity. So we'll warm them up and they will stretch those muscles, but more of in a movement fashion as they warm up, and they'll increase the range of motion as they go. Doesn't mean that we don't ever do static stretching, we do, but usually we do them at different times, maybe perhaps in the recovery period.
For kids, they want to be in shape for their sport. If they're not in shape, they get tired quick, their performance goes down, chance of injury goes way up. So they want to get to a conditioning level where they can excel at their sport. And you don't want to just go out and run sprints with young kids. It needs to be fun. Everything with young kids, it's got to be based about fun. If it's not fun, they don't want to do it. So for conditioning, they can do relays, where you can do running relays, you can do hopping, you can do skipping, you can do backward runs. They're having fun racing, and they're getting in shape. So something like that. Or tag is another way, where it's free rein, it's like agility, they're making all kinds of movements, but it's fun for them. So conditioning is very important, but it's got to be fun.
As a coach, it's important because how you finish practice is how you're going to begin the next day. Because you want everybody to be recovered, you want them to be hydrated, and you want them to be ready to go for the next day. So if you don't complete the cycle, then you're already starting in the hole.
Yes, the cool down, bringing the body back to normal is important. They just don't want to be going all out and then just stop. And it helps recovery for the next day. So some type of cool down, easy jog, easy movement, something like that with a little stretching. That's a good time to stretch because the muscles are warmed up. I call that the developmental stretch. That's when they can improve their stretching at the end. So a nice cool down with some stretching improves their flexibility and help them for the next day.
After any acute injury, which is something that happens right away, you want to use ice for the first 36 to 48 hours. Applying heat will actually make the ankle or body part swell, and you can cause further damage. Strains and sprains are two different things. When you talk about a strain, you talk about something that occurs to a muscle or a tendon. When you talk about a sprain, you're talking about something that deals with a ligament. A tendon connects a muscle to the bone. A ligament connects a bone to the bone. In the ankle, if you have an ankle strain, you're talking about someone that has strained a muscle in the ankle. If you have an ankle sprain, which is very common in sports, where you step on another athlete's foot, or simply your foot rolls over, whether it rolls over in or rolls over out, those ligaments become stretched. Then they become a sprain. And it's very common. If you're coaching any sport and your athlete's ankle goes over, which happens a lot, if they can't balance on one foot and they can't raise up on that foot, then they shouldn't continue. Because usually if they can go up on both toes and come down on both toes, or they can balance on that foot and move around and jump and hop on that foot, then they can probably safely go in. And you definitely want to let their parents know that they need to see a physician following activity if they can continue. If they can't continue, then they should see a physician. If you're not comfortable in making that evaluation, then you definitely should let their parents know that they need to see a physician. I think if I'm a youth league coach and an athlete suffers a bloody nose, one, I will not probably let them return to activity. Why? Because they've suffered a head injury. A nose injury is a head injury. So now you're dealing with a concussion evaluation. You're also dealing with possible nasal fracture. And I think at that level, the child is probably scared and hurting. So at that level, the best thing to do is apply ice, let their parents notify their parents, and they should probably see a physician. If someone's tooth is knocked out, completely knocked out, then they tell you to see if you can put it back in, and then you want to transport that person. Needs to be transported, or fire rescue, or transported to a dentist or the emergency room. If it's a half a tooth or part of a tooth, at that point, they're going to need to go to the emergency room or the dentist. And if you happen to, gets knocked out and you do not want to try to put the tooth back in, or there's damage, then the best thing to do If you have cold milk, that's great, but more than likely you're not going to have that. You can simply put the tooth in some ice and transport it. If not, then just transport it the way it is in a bag or whatever and get it to the professionals as soon as you can. In the youth sports today, if a child gets hit in the head, you should simply ask them questions like, what day is today? Can you recite these numbers? Can you recite these numbers backwards? If there's any type of confusion at all in the athlete. And to me, in youth sports, I think anytime a child is hit in the head, in youth sports, they should be definitely reevaluated by a family physician prior to going back to activity. Emergency action plan, no matter where you are, we do it here in the NBA. Every team has to have an emergency action plan. And if I'm taking it, whether like I'm a swim coach and I go to a pool, what I'm going to do is I'm going to survey the area. Part of my immediate, there may be an emergency access plan already. If there's a lifeguard on duty, I would ask. If there's not, and there's no way to find out, then you have to kind of make your own and just survey the area and say, where am I? What surroundings am I? What streets am I on? If something happens and I call fire rescue, I need to know where they need to go. And what's around me that can help? Are there blankets? Is there a first aid kit? Phone. Do I know how to dial 911 on my phone? You need to know all that simple stuff because seconds can save lives. If you're a coach and you don't have anybody around that knows CPR or even has thought of an emergency management plan, then you are treading on a slippery slope. Because now you have the care of these children playing a sport in your hands and you're not prepared for anything that may happen. That's why they call them accidents. So as a coach, as soon as you step onto the field, you need to make sure that the area is safe. You need to make sure that you have an emergency plan. And if you're not capable of taking care of those people, then you shouldn't be out there practicing unless you have somebody there that can help. Whether you're certified in first aid and CPR or one of your assistants or a family member or a parent or somebody's there that can provide care to one of these children.
The importance of kids consuming the proper amounts of the right types of fluids before, during, and after practices and games cannot be stated enough. Exerting energy raises body temperatures, and if young athletes aren't consuming proper amounts of the right types of fluids, there'll be an increased risk for dehydration, muscle cramps, heat exhaustion, or even heat stroke. Additionally, if they're not eating the right foods prior to activity, they're going to have less energy, more difficulty concentrating, and their overall performance will be compromised. While you cannot control what kids eat or drink before they get to practice or on the games, you can teach them some basics about good nutrition and the importance of staying hydrated that hopefully will steer them toward making healthy decisions in the long run. So let's take a look at some of these key areas.
And so a lot of our athletes will ask that, you know, what's the big deal having a greasy burger with fries or a fried chicken sandwich or even fettuccine alfredo? But those big, heavy foods take so much energy to digest that we teach our athletes they're wasting so much energy on digestion. It's being wasted in their belly trying to break down that food, as opposed to choosing a high quality meal that can be broken down quickly and utilized for energy and shot out to their brain and their muscles so they can really execute that game onto the field. So if that meal isn't going to happen before, but you definitely want to get a snack in, again, to top off those energy stores, you know, looking for something, a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of protein. If you can do peanut butter sandwiches or peanut butter crackers, that's an excellent idea. You know, maybe a granola bar and a piece of fruit. Take that in as your pre-workout snack. Not eating before you work out is probably a poor idea if you want to enhance your mental focus and enhance your body's ability to execute that game. So we tell our athletes never to come to their sport stuffed or starving. So if you can definitely get that pregame meal or get the snack in, then you're able to fuel for that sport. In the absence of the fuel, you start to decrease mental focus, your muscles can fatigue easier, and you actually can put yourself at increased risk for injury without having adequate fuel on board. So for post-game nutrition, you often hear the recommendation is that 30-minute recovery window. So what's going on there is, exercise does create muscle breakdown, and so we're looking to build it back up as strong as we can. So hitting that 30-minute window, getting in protein, carbohydrate, fluid, and electrolytes, and one of the most natural ways you can do that is through low-fat chocolate milk. If parents want to bring snacks after the games to help their kids recover, low-fat chocolate milk would be an excellent recovery snack to bring in, and then pair that with turkey sandwiches, ham sandwiches. A sandwich paired with a glass of low-fat chocolate milk would provide excellent recovery for these athletes.
During activity, as you get going, they get warmed up. You need to segment your practice so that whether it's 15 to 20 minute segments, they have the opportunity to hydrate. So if you're doing stuff and you have, water is simple, you can do water, which is fine, but you really want to have something that has electrolytes in it and also has carbohydrates in it. If you can't really do that, then the thing to do then would be to have water during practice. If it's real hot out there, at some point you're going to have electrolytes because the kids could really start cramping up, and then post practice they need some sort of a carbohydrate drink to get the recovery process going. Our guys might drink. They drink a lot. They might drink 7 or 8 bottles, 24-ounce bottles of our sports drink. During one contest plus water. So that's a lot of fluid for a 48-minute game indoors. And we have, and these are the best athletes in the world. So you can imagine if you're coaching football or soccer in the sun, how much fluid your athletes need to take in through the course. %10 of dehydration will already change your cognitive thought process. So that's the other thing to look at too. Like if you're coaching and they just keep making mistakes over and over, you want to give them a water break. If they come back out and they're good for a couple minutes and they start making mistakes, give them another water break. If they come back out again and they start making, then they're done. So at that point, there's no more need to push them. At that point, they need to hydrate, need to cool down, need to recover, and then you need to practice another day. Heat stroke is a medical emergency. And you're going to see signs occur before heat stroke. When your athletes start getting dry mouth, they stop sweating. If it's extremely hot outside and you're not giving them adequate water breaks, or your athletes aren't drinking, then you're heading down the road for heat illness. What is key with any athletes that are playing outside is that, or even inside, because we do it too, is that you have to during your water breaks, you need to dry off. So everybody should have a towel because your body cools by sweating. So as you take in fluid, your body sweats, and that helps cool your body and your core temperature. If you see your athletes just pouring water all over your body, that is not a good thing because the water needs to go in their body, not on their body. When you see people just pouring water on them, then what happens is that it cools the skin, but that does nothing for one, giving your body the water that it needs. 2, it kind of tricks your body into thinking that it's cool when it's not, because again, your body, through your body hairs, you sweat, that water comes up under your hair, and as you move, it wicks off and your body cools. So that's the radiator. When you dry that off, that helps your body cool itself and it helps with performance. In today's world, we have to be smarter, and so I would say the coach is like, don't do as you did. You got to be smarter than that, and you have to have a plan, and You know, and I think as a coach, you have to be prepared. Not only do you have to be prepared for emergencies, because you know, as a parent, I am entrusting you with my child's care, whether it's recreation or not. And now, because they're participating, whether it's tennis or football, there's still a risk, you know, greater or less. But I am still entrusting you with their care. So what you have to do as part of your care program and prevention and everything else is that you have to have a practice plan. You can't just walk out onto a field and wing it. You need to have a plan. You need to know when you're going to drill, what drills you're going to do, when your hydration breaks are going to be, and when practice is over, you know? So you have to have a practice plan with objectives, with time hydration, and then go from there. And again, it doesn't take a lot of dehydration to make the body and the mind go, you know? It doesn't take much at all.
It has been my pleasure to serve as your host, and I'd like to thank each of you for your efforts to make a positive difference in children's lives through the amazing power of sports. Your young athletes will remember you and the experience that they had playing for you for the rest of their lives. So best of luck this season in providing them with a safe and fun-filled year. Now, there are some important aspects of being an NYSCA coach you need to know about. So here's John Ang, Chief Operating Officer of the National Alliance for Youth Sports, to take you through them.